Coming up on Lawmakers, Ashley Smith receives $70,000 in rewards for her role in the apprehension of Brian Nichols. Opponents of a strict voter identification measure rally at the Capitol. And the Senate passes a bill that would replace the Department of Motor Vehicle Safety with the Department of Driver Services. Those stories and more are next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Thursday, March 24th. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Nwandi Lawson.
And good evening, everyone. The Senate is still in session at this hour.
And with over 60 bills on the combined Senate calendars, we expect them to be in session for a while.
And also on our broadcast tonight, a pro-film industry bill, which passed today, may already be having an effect.
And we'll check in with Tom Crawford of CapitolImpact.com. But our top story tonight, rewards for Ashley Smith. Today at the Capitol, Governor Perdue and representatives from 5 different law enforcement organizations honored Ashley Smith with reward money for her assistance in apprehending the suspect Brian Nichols. She was awarded $70,000 today on top of the $2,500 she had already received. David Zelski joins us live from the Capitol with more on that story. David.
Well, thanks, Gerald. $20,000 from the FBI and $25,000 from the U.S. Marshal Service were the largest checks awarded today. The press Ashley Smith has received over the last couple of weeks helped bring a couple of hundred people to the Capitol for the check ceremony.
Ashley has stated that she believes Brian Nichols was led to her door that night so that she could bring the rampage to an end.
Yes, my life has changed, but that is a small fraction compared to all the families that lost loved ones during this tragic event earlier in the month.
I am pleased to present this check to you for $10,000.
$20,000.
A check for $5,000.
This is presented to Ashley Smith for your bravery and will in the face of extreme danger and difficulty.
Ms. Smith's day did not end there. She then headed to the House and Senate to address both chambers.
I would just like to say thank you all very much. I'm very honored, and God bless you all.
Representative Pedro Marin then offered a House resolution to honor Ashley Smith on this day every year. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, David.
The House bill overhauling Georgia's child support system failed to get enough votes to pass the Senate today. Senator Seth Harp outlined the provisions of House Bill 221.
This bill goes from a bill that sets support solely on the non-custodial parent to an income shares model. It sets up a method of appeal that has been denied to people who find themselves in this situation. It sets up and recognizes numerous conditions that affect the custody. And finally, it encourages parenting by the non-custodial parent and gives recognition to that through a formula that is set forth in the bill.
The bill proposes that child support payments can be adjusted based on how much time the non-custodial parents spend with their children. Senator Valencia C. offered an amendment that would do away with that provision.
I mean, a parent should want to spend time with their children. Now, let's think about this. Now, think long and hard. You want to give an incentive. You want to tell parents, if you spend time with your children or your child, we will take away some of the support that you're supposed to be giving them. Now, children, I've raised 2, have to be food, clothed, and sheltered 24/7, 365, 366 in a leap year.
Several amendments failed, and then House Bill 221 failed to get a majority. It got 28 votes, 1 vote short of passage. The Senate will reconsider its vote next Tuesday.
Meanwhile, the Senate voted today to repeal the law that requires Georgians to give fingerprints when they apply for a driver's license. The repeal bill was one of several bills voted on in the House on Family Day. However, unlike most of those bills, this one was not unanimously agreed upon. The bill passed 40-10, but not before some minor amendments and a half hour of debate.
We got word from State Patrol that this law had helped them catch over 170 felons. Now, if you tell me that's not working, I'd have to disagree with you.
I have the utmost respect for our police organizations and law enforcement. I will say this, though, that their desire to have all our information does not outweigh my desire for privacy.
Would you not agree that anything that could possibly help the police departments in apprehending suspects could be beneficial, and that the fingerprint does assist them?
Well, the question of beneficial, I guess, would be up to each and every person. I know I wouldn't want all my information given to every police officer merely for the fact that some date in the future he might want to arrest me for something, and I would suspect most people don't want that either.
In other news, activists gathered outside the Capitol today to voice opposition to two bills that would require photo ID at the polls. House Bill 244 and Senate Bill 84 both proposed the change from 17 forms of identification to only 5 allowable at voting polls. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman now joins us live from the Capitol with more. Jesse.
The one debate over these two controversial bills continue today, not in either chamber but on the Capitol steps. Citizens against the two bills heard from lawmakers and community leaders. The group was very vocal, and here's a sample of what they said. Several hundred activists joined House and Senate members today on the Capitol steps to voice their opposition to House Bill 244 and Senate Bill 84.
There's no other state in America that has as restrictive laws pending as it relates to voting as Georgia. Only thing they are doing is denying access to all of the folks, elderly folk, in nursing homes, folks who don't have driver's license now. They're telling them you got to get a photo ID. While we send young men and young women to die for the right to vote in faraway land, we seek to inflict mortal wounds on our right to vote here in Georgia. Yes. There was some discussion about making these bills a little bit better. Tweak them a little bit. All right. Let me tell you, poison is poison. All right. You can't make poison nectar. You can't make it juice. It's poison. We've got to kill Senate Bill 84 and House Bill 244. Yeah.
And both House Bill 244 and Senate Bill 84 have cleared their chamber of origin and have made it through committee hearings in the next chamber. The bills have been opposed by the Secretary of State's office and prompted a walkout by Democrats in both chambers earlier in the session. Rules committees have not yet taken up either of these bills this week, so they will most likely be taken up next week, which will likely be the final week of the session. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Jesse. Well, a measure that passed the Senate as a prohibition on plastic license plate shields emerged from the House today with provisions to provide free IDs for voters. Representative Tom Rice explained that besides ensuring that tags are visible to cameras, the House version of Senate Bill 93 also transfers DUI risk reduction officers from the Department of Human Resources to the Department of Motor Vehicle Services and allows voters to request a free photo ID.
Page 11. Is an opportunity that we put in place in this bill to offer free photo IDs to everybody in this state who does not have one. So for purposes of voter identification, all you have to do is to do what it says on lines 28 through lines 34. You're 65 years or older. Swear under oath that they're indigent, cannot pay a fee for the identification card. Swear under oath that he or she desires an identification card in order to vote in the primary election in Georgia. He or she does not have any other form of identification acceptable for identification at polls in order to vote. And that's all that it does, offers a free identification.
Democratic leaders opposed the amended bill on the grounds that the cost of the IDs is unknown, that many parts of the state do not have driver's license bureaus, and that the measure would increase lines at DMVS facilities. Representative David Lucas said he understood the provision for senior citizens, but wanted to know how an ex-convict might apply for the photo ID.
What happens if you're under age 65, just got out of prison, or have served your probation, all of it, can't find a job because you had a felony record?
Then you go under Section 2. Well, you either go under Section B, which swears an indigent oath, or 2, which swears under oath that he or she deserves an identification card to vote in the primary election, prerequisite to 21-2417.
The amended version of Senate Bill 93 passed 111 to 49. The changes must now be approved by the Senate.
The Senate passed a bill today that would do away with the Department of Motor Vehicle Safety. The department was created in 2001 and handles several functions, including the issue of driver's licenses, tags, and titles. Lawmakers Chris Knight joins us live with more on House Bill 501. Chris.
Well, Gerald, supporters of the legislation say it will result in a more efficient and cost-saving way to handle motor vehicle issues. House Bill 501 would dismantle the DMVS and disperse the department's current functions among 4 state agencies.
The Department of Driver Services' core focus would be on issuing driver's licenses and license renewal. The Department of Public Safety would handle enforcement issues. The Public Service Commission would deal with anything having to do with regulated industry, and the Department of Revenue would handle tags and titles. Senator Ross Tollison, who's the bill's sponsor in the Senate, says dismantling the DMVS would be much more efficient and cost-saving.
These departments already can focus on those core missions. I can't say ever doing away with a mega agency is going to cost the state of Georgia. Matter of fact, I submit to you, I just don't know how much it's going to save us.
But others disagree.
This is the biggest fragmentation of government services that I've seen in years. Instead of having one agency to deal with logically connected problems that Georgia drivers may face, we're now creating 1, 2, 3, 4 different agencies which will deal with this. If you want to talk about fragmentation of services, look at this legislation.
In the end, House Bill 501 passed by a vote of 35 to 15.
And the bill passed with an amendment that would increase the fine for those convicted of multiple DUI offenses from $200 to $500. The House will now agree or disagree to the bill's changes, which will determine if House Bill 501 heads to a conference committee or to Governor Perdue's desk for him to sign into law. Reporting live, I'm Chris Knight for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Chris. Meanwhile, the Senate today passed a bill aimed at attracting movie makers back to Georgia. Senator Mitch Seabaugh is a strong proponent of House Bill 269, a measure with bipartisan support.
You know, there used to be a time when you went to the movie theater and watched a movie that chances were good that that film was filmed either partially or wholly here in the state of Georgia. But that time is no more. It's because there are states and other countries who have offered certain incentives to attract the industry away from Georgia. We built an industry here in Georgia, and with that there's a lot of people that live here in Georgia, work in the industry, but they're having to travel to other states and other countries to work. The governor this past year reconstituted the Film Commission who worked on this bill right here, HB 539, which provides an incentive for the film industry and the television industry to come back to Georgia in a big way. One important thing to look at this, that this incentive only comes after they come to the state, spend the money, and generate additional tax revenues. And then out of that, we will rebate back to them a certain portion for them coming and spending the money here.
There are a lot of residual benefits that fold in well with our tourism effort. As you know, we are increasing our advertising for the tourism effort, and I just urge you to support this. I hope we can get a unanimous vote on this, because this is something that we really need to send a clear signal that Georgia is united in wanting to enhance our film industry.
The bill passed by a vote of 50 to 1. I'm told that a major motion picture studio has already contacted the state expressing interest in filming a project in Georgia.
Well, Georgians shopping for school supplies this summer will be happy to know that the Senate passed the 2005 sales tax holiday today. House Bill 5 was approved late this afternoon. That legislation would allow a sales tax exemption from July 28th through July 31st, 2005. The exempted items include school supplies, clothing, and some electronic equipment such as computers. The bill now goes to Governor Sonny Perdue for his signature. And legislation that provides equal jury strikes for the prosecution and defense passed the Senate today. House Bill 170, known as the Criminal Justice Act of 2005, also changes several other court-related procedures in criminal trials and appeals. Senator Bill Hamrick explains why he believes the legislation is needed.
In the criminal justice system, there are 3 main players: the victims of crimes who have been oftentimes devastated, the defendants who are accused of committing crimes against our citizens, and the prosecutors who prosecute those crimes on behalf of the victims. It can sometimes feel impersonal for the victims because they don't really have an advocate for them other than the prosecutor, who actually represents the state of Georgia and makes decisions that
they believe are in the best interest of the state and may not always be in the best interest of the victim. And I believe this legislation will give victims more confidence in our criminal justice system.
House Bill 170 passed 44-3 and goes to the governor. The Senate also passed another part of the governor's crime legislation, House Bill 172. As Senator Joseph Carter explains, the bill is designed to assist the victims of crimes.
This revises Georgia's restitution laws to recognize that crime victims are a priority. It will significantly reduce the impediments to awarding and collecting restitution in criminal cases and will create new tools to help ensure that victims receive the restitution that is owed to them. In addition, it acknowledges that restitution is consistent with the goal of rehabilitation, and as such, it provides that juveniles, just as adult offenders, will be responsible for the financial impact of their crimes.
House Bill 172 passed 45-0 and goes to Governor Perdue.
And it's time for our weekly check-in with Tom Crawford, the national editor for CapitalImpact.com. I began by asking Tom about the bill that provides for a total reorganization of the State Department of Motor Vehicle Safety.
The Senate passed a bill, Gerald, that had already been approved by the House. It will be signed by Governor Perdue, we're all pretty sure. It will almost completely dismantle the Department of Motor Vehicle Safety and shuffle out the parts of it to various other agencies like Public Safety, the PSC, and other, I think, Department of Revenue as well. There will be a much smaller agency left called the Department of Driver Services that will basically concentrate on handling driver's licenses.
Democrats in the Senate complaining that there should have been a fiscal note, meaning that a bill that is going to have some monetary impact on the state budget that should have an accompanying note with it. Republicans saying that not needed. Is there anything else behind this dismantling of DMVS, Tom?
Well, Governor Perdue is worried about the long lines at driver's license stations. That can be a very bad issue for him when he's running for re-election next year. He thinks that this is the best way to attack the problem. There are some Democrats who disagree with him and think it's going to cost the state a lot of money. We'll just have to wait and see who's right.
All right, let's move on to the state budget. Earlier in the week, we were led to believe there was at least a possibility of the big budget for FY06 being in the House and Senate today. That didn't happen. What kept that from happening?
There's a major disagreement, they call it a lockdown, between the House and Senate negotiators on the budget, and it's basically over how do you divide up the pork barrel spending. The House wants to spend about $3.5 million on various small grants to local legislative districts. The Senate insists that the money instead should be put in a pot at the Department of Community Affairs and divided up that way. It's become a major issue between the two sides. They can't agree on it, and who knows when we'll get a budget out of here.
Yeah, a budget going down to the last second. Imagine that.
It's almost unheard of, isn't it?
A couple of other issues today in the Senate. A couple of bills about privacy and anonymity. One would keep from public records or from the open records laws the names of state employees, at least some of their vital information, saying that that wasn't fair to state employees to have their names out there, perhaps presenting some dangers. Democrats taking a different view of it, and critics of the bill taking a different view.
That's right. Critics of the bill say that it's really an attempt to make it harder for unions like the SEIU to solicit public employees to join the unions, because this bill would hide not only sensitive information about them, but their name and their telephone number and their address as well.
And quickly, Tom, one other bill that involves some privacy issues, and that is people who donate money to the University System of Georgia, to the various institutions there, in certain conditions, if they wish that they could remain anonymous. What was the opposition to that bill for?
The opposition was based on this. A lot of these corporations that are making large donations to universities and university foundations are also doing quite a bit of business with the universities, and they felt it was only right we know where the money's coming from and whether it's influencing maybe some of the business decisions that these universities are making.
All right, Tom, we are out of time. We're anxious to check with you next week for the last 3 days of the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
The Senate Ethics Committee passed Governor Perdue's ethics reform package yesterday. The governor's House Floor Leader, Rich Golick, says the committee substitute to House Bill 48 makes it a stronger bill than what passed out of the House. David Zelski has more on House Bill 48.
There are 4 major issues Governor Perdue's original ethics reform package addressed: a ban on gifts, a revolving door policy, conflict of interest rules, and penalties for violating the rules. 3 of the 4 remain.
I think the story here today is the process is going forward. The bill was passed out of committee. We look forward to it being passed on the floor of the Senate. We'll go to a conference committee and pass out the best version we possibly can. But progress was made today, and that's ultimately what matters.
The Senate Ethics Committee added something that wasn't in the governor's original package: a legislative ethics committee to deal with conflict of interest.
Right now, we don't have any policemen when it comes to legislative ethics and conflicts of interest. The entity that he's proposing is a truly nonpartisan entity because it is divided equally amongst Republican and Democrats. Those two sets of members from both sides of the aisle will hire an executive director to put forward a code of ethics.
The ban on gifts remains struck from the bill, an issue the majority of the Senate Ethics Committee says should be handled next year. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
The Senate Ethics Committee also passed House Bill 665, another ethics reform bill which deals only with fraud and waste in state programs. The information in this bill is incorporated into House Bill 48, but is moving forward just in case the big ethics reform bill doesn't pass. Senate Minority Leader Robert Brown was one of the two committee members who voted against House Bill 48 in yesterday's committee meeting.
The word had come over from the leadership in the House that if we sent anything over that was significantly different from what was sent over from the House, the bill was dead. And so the leadership in the Senate, the Republican leadership in the Senate, apparently is willing to say, well, we need to get something out of here, and are willing to cave under the pressure that comes from the House. That is not the position of the Democratic caucus in the Senate. We, as you know, have worked to pass a strong ethics bill for the last 3 years out of the Senate, and we are willing to go back to that position.
House Bill 665 and 48 are now in Senate rules.
Well, as you heard Tom Crawford mention a few moments ago, the Senate today passed their version of a bill that would allow some donors to state colleges and universities to remain anonymous. Senator Seth Harp explains the Senate's substitute to House Bill 340. Senator Kasim Reed explains why he opposes the bill. First, Senator Harp.
This bill provides an exemption from disclosure of personal information concerning donors or potential donors to schools that are in our university system and our trade and technical schools. It is necessary in order to have estate planning, business planning, and things of this sort, that there be confidentiality in doing this. I realize the media is very hot on this bill, but by the same token, this bill will afford our institutions, when a donor requests anonymity, to not release it. Most of the information is already available because the overwhelming majority, probably 99.9% of the people that make donations to colleges and universities, like to receive the credit.
In my judgment, this is a massive giveaway of the public will. There is a huge difference between private colleges and universities, which are funded by private financing, and universities which are funded by taxpayers' dollars from all over Georgia, no matter what corner you come from. So there is a higher standard for disclosure, especially with regard to giving and finances for our public institutions.
House Bill 340 passed by committee substitute. The vote was 30 to 21. The measure returns to the House. And the Senate today passed 3 House bills that repealed Jim Crow laws that most people didn't even know were still part of Georgia law. House Bills 25, 26, and 27 repealed measures that allowed a Georgia governor to close schools, suspend compulsory school attendance, and provide some school grants. All those laws were passed years ago in the effort to avoid integrating public schools. Each bill was repealed by unanimous vote and go to the governor.
A bill that gives financial incentives to invest in premarital counseling passed the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. Senate Majority Whip Mitch Seabaugh explains House Bill 378.
House Bill 378 deals with premarital counseling and would allow a financial incentive for a couple to get premarital counseling before they get married. If they take a class of 6 hours of counseling before they get married, to provide them an incentive of about $35 reduction in their marriage license if they would get premarital counseling. An interesting statistic we found that 76% of the people who have premarital counseling have found it to be very, very helpful in the success of their marriage, not only staying married, but making the marriage a happier, more fulfilling marriage. And another interesting statistic will say that basically 10 to 15% of the people who've gone through premarital counseling end up not getting married because of the information provided in the counseling.
Senator Seabaugh says the state would not lose any money on this bill unless the percentage of couples who receive counseling jumps from the current 43% up to over 70%. House Bill 378 is now in the Senate Rules Committee. And legislation that would provide for a statewide telecommunications system for the blind and print-disabled citizens passed the House Public Utilities and Telecommunications Committee yesterday. Senate Bill 91 is sponsored by Republican Senator Tommy Williams and Democratic Senator David Edelman, who explained the legislation to the House committee.
This program, and the way it's worked in other states, and the statute is designed to allow the Public Service Commission to issue an RFP so that different companies would bid for providing the service, including the content, which would be, if it's sort of awarded in the way it's happened in other states, it would be, for example, audible version of the USA Today newspaper and the like. But it would be up to the Public Service Commission through the competitive bidding process to find a company who can most effectively and in a cost-efficient way provide the service.
Senate Bill 91 now goes to House Rules.
2 elementary schools from Stone Mountain performed at the Capitol Tuesday afternoon. Lawmakers Ashley Poland has more.
Students from Smoke Rise and Hamburg Elementary Schools performed at the Capitol this afternoon, kicking off the National Anthem Project.
There's a special initiative right now that's being sponsored by music educators and others across the nation to get Americans to learn the national anthem, to sing it properly, and to use the national anthem to begin major events.
The students sang timeless American classics, including America the Beautiful and the Star-Spangled Banner.
The songs, that's the best part, of course. Like the American songs, Black History songs, Christmas songs. My favorite song is "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple, 'Tis a Gift to Be Free."
And what is that song about?
It's about gifts that Americans brought to here, like gifts of joy and love and wonderful things.
The choirs hope to bring attention to the vital role that music plays in their lives. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Ashley Poland.
Some terrific young folks. Lawmakers will not be broadcast tomorrow because the Georgia General Assembly will not be in session. Lawmakers will return with all the latest from under the Gold Dome Tuesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. If you've missed any part of this broadcast, tune in when Lawmakers is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. on GPB. Just a reminder, for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Lawmakers is streamed live, then archived on our website every night that we're on the air. Be sure and tune in tomorrow night at 7 for Georgia Week in Review. This week I will join host Susan Hoffman as we look at the General Assembly session and what they hope to accomplish in the last few legislative days. That's tomorrow at 7 only on Georgia Public Broadcasting. Now stay tuned for Prep Sports Plus. That program is coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for this, the 37th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wendy Lawson.
I'm Gerald Bryant. For all of us here at Lawmakers, have a blessed Easter weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.